Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I know that we are after a long session in the NAC and a very important one, so I don't want to prolong for too long. Thank you very much, first of all, for coming, Deputy Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and pleasure to welcome you to today's ceremony marking the 40th anniversary of the foundation of the Solidarity Movement. As you all well know, taking part in different ceremonies is a part of our daily job description, but even in this routine, there are moments for us of a genuine personal connection and a sense of pride, and for me this is such a moment. Solidarity was born in 1980 in Gdańsk out of Poles longing for freedom, democracy, justice, decent life, and so much more. It was the first independent labor union in the Soviet system, which after all claimed that it was a workers' paradise. This is why it was so dangerous to the communist idea. Solidarity fought for workers' rights and freedoms, but there was much more at stake in this unequal fight. It was thanks to its charismatic leaders like Anna Walentynovich, Lech Wałęsa, Bogdan Lis, Andrzej Gwiazda, and many more, that the trade union quickly turned into a social movement which at some point claimed almost 10 million members. Despite many attempts by the communists to destroy it, including the martial law, it managed not only to survive, but also shake and ultimately shatter the corrupt system imposed by the Soviets in Poland. Solidarity was born in my country, but its impact was felt all throughout Europe. Changes triggered by the movement contributed greatly to the fall of communism in other countries which were imprisoned behind the Iron Curtain after the World War II. From the early 1989 on, we watched those countries one by one break free from the totalitarian system until November 1989, when we witnessed the fall of the last wall dividing Europe, the Berlin Wall. However, Solidarity was not the first and not the only attempt in Eastern Europe to stand up to the system. Different partisan anti-Soviet and anti-communist movements in Baltic countries, Poland and elsewhere, the East German uprising of 1953, anti-Soviet Hungarian Revolution, the Prague Spring and Charter 77, and in this context let me symbolically single out the father of our Czech colleague, actor Pavel Landowski, who was one of the leaders of the Charter 77 in then Czechoslovakia. Different national movements in former Yugoslavia, Romania and Bulgaria, we cannot forget about their struggle. Solidarity defined as one of its goals fostering cooperation with activists from other Eastern Bloc countries in fighting the chains of the communist regime and spreading the virus of freedom. Solidarity changed Poland and Europe. It made the dream of our ancestors to be part of this community of free nations in Europe and across the Atlantic possible. And I have to say, I couldn't think of a better place for this red logo behind me than here at the NATO headquarters. It is here that 30 allies exercise the solidarity and unity every day. The Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty is the best symbol of that idea, which is very much alive among us. Now, I would like to ask Deputy Secretary General Mircea Geoană, and then followed by Ambassador Muriel Domenac, to take the floor. Ambassador Domenac's personal story shows us what solidarity meant to our friends in the West and how critical was their support to the movement, for which I would like to thank symbolically today. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Ambassador Shatkovsky. Ladies and gentlemen, Mesdames et Messieurs, behind me you can indeed see the latest addition to NATO's growing collection of historic artifacts. The world-famous Solidarność. This sign is forever linked with the struggle for freedom in Poland in the 1980s. It represents people's struggle for a better life after decades of communist dictatorship and Soviet domination. A struggle depicted in the images on show in the Agora. It was local poets who helped supply the name Solidarność, while Polish artist Jerzy Janicewski produced its iconic design, developing it during the strikes of August 1980, exactly 40 years ago. The independent trade union and movement, Solidarity, led by Lech Walesa and many other leaders, from the shipyards of Gdansk, united the Polish people against the communist regime. And as the ambassador has mentioned, at one point, 10 million citizens of Poland were members of this movement, a quarter of Poland's population. That unity, that solidarity, they were vital during these long, dark days to come. And especially after the introduction of the martial law in 1981. I was a kid in Romania. I still visualize and remember those dark moments. In time, Solidarity's commitment to peaceful protest would prove incredibly successful and powerful. By the end of the decade, Poland's leaders would sit down with its democratic opposition in round-table talks. And by August 1989, Poland had its first non-communist prime minister since the war, Tadeusz Mazowiecki. Within months, the wall in Berlin had fallen, the Soviet Union had collapsed, and communist rule was no more. Solidarity has inspired Poland, and Poland has inspired the world. These events were followed very closely in my own country and in all former communist countries, and indeed over the world. They helped to inspire my countrymen and countrywomen in Romania to embark on the Romanian Revolution, the last tragic and bloody episode of this journey towards freedom of our nations. Because the idea of solidarity is also at the core of our alliance. Allied solidarity is the foundation of Article 5. It embodies the spirit of consultation, cooperation, and burden sharing that connects all members of the NATO alliance, our alliance, in words, but also in deeds. During the protests, people around the world supported Solidarity and the brave Polish people, as did the NATO alliance. Under the so-called Brezhnev Doctrine, the Soviet Union claimed the right to intervene in the affairs of other communist countries, a doctrine that was used to justify brutal interventions in Hungary in 1956 and in Czechoslovakia in 1968. NATO was committed to doing everything it could to prevent Soviet intervention in Poland. In declassified documents from that time, the then Secretary General Joseph Luns wrote that, and I quote, "The basic policy of the alliance is that Poland should be free to decide its own future." This basic right to freedom and sovereignty applies to all nations. It applies everywhere people strive for freedom against oppressive regimes, where their voices are not heard and their votes are not counted. It is sad to see, long after the Solidarity movement helped to bring freedom to Poland, that many people in Europe still do not have that right. In Belarus, we see how the regime has used violence against peaceful demonstrators. We call on the government to respect their fundamental rights. The people of Belarus have the right of free speech, the right to decide their own future, without interference from abroad. They have the right to peaceful protest and the right to fair and free elections. Perhaps the ultimate expression of Poland's sovereignty came in 1999, when the Polish nation exercised its right to choose and become a member of NATO. Since that historic moment, Poland has proven to be a strong and steadfast member of our alliance. Poland has taken part in NATO missions and operations all around the world, from the Western Balkans to Afghanistan and Iraq. It hosts the US-led multinational battle group part of our enhanced forward presence. It takes part in air policing and maritime operations and contributes to humanitarian disaster relief. Poland's record as a member state, its active participation in NATO-led operations, and its overall contribution to implementing our policies show the true spirit of Allied solidarity. The Poland of today is very different from the Poland of 40 years ago. It is free, it is prosperous, it is a steadfast member of NATO. And you can trace a direct line from today all the way back to the shipyards of Gdansk. And the bright red symbol of Solidarność just behind me. On this auspicious moment, Ambassador and dear friends, please convey to the brave Polish people our admiration, our support, and our full loyalty. Thank you, and enjoy this great moment together.